some people like to make, diaries or logbooks or whatever. I like to get a photo just to kind of, that was always the goal because I thought, well, someday, I'll be too old, hopefully, to do much, and I'll have some photos to look at of, my crazy youth.
Off Gassing, a scuba podcast with host Nick Hogel. Primarily underwater photography of shipwrecks and caves. If you're looking for pictures of fish or coral, you're in the wrong place. These are the words written as I scroll through my next guest's profile. Images that bring us into the past, images that let us view where few have explored, and images of extreme environments. In this week's episode, I speak with Jeff Lindsay. We discuss our love of Malaysian cuisine, underwater photography, technical diving, shipwrecks, and much more. I hope you enjoy. Jeff, how are you doing this evening?
I'm doing great, Nick. How are you? Thanks for having me.
Hey, no, thank you very much for participating in the podcast today. It's exciting to have you on. I know there was some scheduling conflicts there, but I'm glad we were able to finally work it out and have you on here. So, what time you're in the evening over there? I always get kind of mixed up, but it's 8:30 in the evening for you, I'm assuming.
Yeah, that's right. So I can have a drink. It's okay. It's not 8:30 a.m. You're 8:30 a.m. You're in Malaysia, right?
Yes, I am based in Malaysia right now, so it is in the AM. So if people, luckily people won't see the video, but this is water. It's not vodka.
Sure it is. Sure. So I have a special connection to Malaysia. My wife is Malaysian, and we were married in Penang. So I know that part of the world well. Yeah.
Oh,
it's a
wow.
special place for me.
Oh,
Yeah.
my Lord. Is she from Penang?
She's from KL. Yeah.
Oh, wow. That is so random. Yeah, no, so I don't know if I told you, but I actually live in Penang.
Do you really?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a small world.
I know. Wow, that's so funny. Me and my girlfriend moved out here about a year ago now, and so I don't know if you're familiar with what is going on right now in Penang, but there is a huge tech boom going on in Penang. All the big tech companies are moving here, and they're calling it the semiconductor of Southeast. I'm sorry, not the semiconductor, the Silicon Valley of Southeast Asia, because everybody's moving here. And that's what brought me out here. Was I worked for a company in Austin, Texas, and they just opened up a facility out here. So I came out here to train, help get the facility going, and my little joke that I tell people is I came out here basically to work myself out of a job.
Perfect.
Unfortunately, I'm sure you know, there's not a whole lot of diving in Penang, but I am very, very close to a lot of beautiful destinations. Within an hour plane ride, I can get to a lot of great areas. So I'm happy to be out here. But yeah, wow, super random.
No. Penang's a beautiful spot. I love that we would hike out to the lighthouse on the far coast there. There's some long trail. I forget the name of it. But it was like Monkey Beach or Monkey. I don't know. It was just beautiful. It was a wonderful place. I hope to see it again soon.
Yeah, definitely. If you ever make it back out here, definitely let me know. It would be awesome to meet up for a beer in the same time zone.
Yes, not in the morning, in the afternoon.
But yeah, it's a great place. Absolutely love it. Another one of my jokes is I came here on a backpacking trip like a few years ago before I moved out here, probably about 4 or 5 years ago now, and I just instantly fell in love with the place, and the food is just phenomenal. Malaysian food in general, because it's such a mixture of
is unbelievable. For people that go on about, I love to travel and try different cuisine. And I'm like, look, you haven't been to Malaysia yet? Well, then you need to go. If you're a foodie, go to Malaysia. And Penang in particular, oh my God, the food there. I don't know how everybody's so skinny.
Oh,
there's so much good food. Why is everybody so thin there? What is
That's
it?
actually my joke because I tell people I'm like I've probably gained about like 5 6 kilos since I moved here, and I've like just converted to the kilos because it's a lot easier. But that's that's about 11
It
12
sounds
pounds
better,
out there.
doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's awesome though. That's great to have that little bit of a connection. Great way to
Sorry,
open up a
totally took
podcast.
took this in a different direction
No,
than you
no,
were
that's awesome. It's
planning.
it's love because I literally I meet people and they're like, yeah, some people either know and love Penang or they've never heard of it. They're like, oh, I know Penang curry at the Thai restaurant, but as far as Penang, Malaysia, it's like no, it's such it's people know it or they don't, and it's such a great place. So anything I can do to promote it a little bit to get people here is awesome. But
Absolutely.
it being a scuba diving podcast, let's start gearing in that direction. So tell me about your journey into scuba. So tell me the how, the what, the why, that first experience, that first breath. I know with some people it's instantly hooked. Other people it took them a little bit to get into. And then I guess another question I wanted to ask because I've spoken to some other photographers before, and it was like, okay, I'm just using this as a tool to further my photography. So, were you a photographer beforehand looking into getting into the underwater world? Did the two worlds just kind of merge? Just tell me about the story a little bit, I guess.
So yeah, so to I guess we'll start at your first question. So kind of how and when. So we got to go way, way back. Way back. I was quite young when I started. So I grew up on the Great Lakes, and so at the front of our house, there's a large body of water, and there's all sorts of shipping traffic, and there's a lot going on. It's busy waterways, and so kind of naturally curious about what's going on. But it was pretty clear for me. There was one day in elementary school. So I was very young at the time. I don't know, maybe 12 or 13 or something like that. And the way that our school was, it actually looked out onto the St. Clair River. And it was known at that time that there was a shipwreck right in front of where the school was. And so I can remember like staring out the window, daydreaming when I should be paying attention to like, mathematics or whatever was being taught at the time. I don't remember. Uh, Poor life decisions there. But anyways, I remembered seeing scuba divers getting geared up and they were going out to see this shipwreck that was just offshore. And I remember thinking, I need to go see that. I don't know how, I need to go see that. But when you're like, 10, 11, that seems like about as plausible as going to the moon, right? You're like, oh, that would be amazing, but I could only dream about such a thing, right? So I thought about it for a while, and of course, it was always there, in front of our house, and it was always in the back of my mind. And so the day I turned 16, I had to like convince my mom to sign a waiver to say it was okay for me to go take lessons. And that was it right away. I was hooked pretty much right away. And within a couple weeks of completing my certification, I went to that shipwreck, and I've been all about shipwrecks since. And that was, oh man, 1990. I think I was 16. So I'll let everyone do the math. I don't want to think about it, but it's a long time ago. But it's it's been an interesting path for me personally, where it's taken me and how I got to where I am now. So it's been a fun ride so far. So the next part of your question, I guess, was photography, and I was definitely not into photography when I was 16, but it wasn't too long after when I started picking up my dad's camera, and so he always had it kicking around. He always had a couple cameras, and sure enough, when you get into the 18, 19, you start to travel a little bit, you start to see the world a little bit, then the cameras were always coming with me. So no matter where I was going, I always had a camera in hand.
What kind of camera was it?
Oh, man, the first one, it was a Minolta.
Oh,
Was my
okay.
dad's old camera. Obviously not an underwater camera. It was just a SLR Minolta. Film, obviously. So very, very old school. And I had wanted to get into underwater photography for quite some time. I always wanted to join the two up. And it wasn't until probably 96, 97, I think I got into that. And I was given a film camera for underwater use. The what were they called? Motor Marines. I think it was a Motor Marine. You'll have to Google that one. I'm sure it's in a museum somewhere. But I was awful. I was absolutely awful. It was really disheartening. I thought, oh, it won't be because I was moderately okay topside, but moving underwater, it was a heartbreak for me when I first tried it. I ended up losing that camera on a dive out in British Columbia, and I kind of thought, well, maybe that's for the best, and it's probably still at the bottom of Discovery Passage out there somewhere, and I never thought much about it. But then I moved into digital video, and that would have been around '99. It was very early in the digital video era, and so that was a challenge to get video and get it into a computer. What we take for granted today, SD cards and stuff, they didn't exist in 1999. USB didn't exist. None of that stuff was around, right? So, things like Firewire and all that kind of stuff was really troublesome and twitchy. And so I worked with that for a few years, and I still enjoy video. I still shoot a fair bit of video, but I'd say in the last, maybe 10 years, it's been stills has been my thing. So I kind of, luckily with the rigs now, you can shoot both with one setup, which is kind of nice. Whereas, 10, 15 years ago, I was sometimes carrying two rigs. I gets a bit busy on a dive when you got to bring two. So I like simplicity.
No, no, for sure. So I'm gonna kind of jump around in the timeline just cause I'm curious. But what do you shoot on now?
So today I'm shooting on a Nikon D850. So it's a digital SLR. That's my primary rig, and it's in a Aquatica housing. And it's rated for deeper than I'll ever go. It's a great low light rig, and sometimes I'll shoot strobes, sometimes I'll shoot video lights, sometimes I'll shoot ambient. Just depends on what I want out of the dive and what I think I can achieve with it. So, but it's a powerful camera compared to what the old film cameras were. I got to give like total huge credit to the guys and girls, 20, 30 years ago that would have one roll of film that would go down, knock it out of the park, with like, 25 exposures. That's all you got, right? Fixed ISO. That's all you got. And I'm serious. When you go see, like, if you look back in the day and you see some magazine photo and it was shot, pre 1990, and it's an amazing photo, that is wow. Yeah, I'm still amazed. So we're spoiled.
Well, no. So I hate even saying that I do enjoy photography topside. It is a hobby of mine, and it was kind of almost the same thing. Like I'd like to travel. I'm still friends with a photographer, professional photographer, videographer. He does some really cool stuff in the Austin, Texas area, and he was getting a new camera rig, and I would show him pictures on my phone, and he was probably just looking a way to sell his camera, but he's like, hey, you should buy my old camera. This could be something that you can add to your travel experiences. And it did, and I really got into it, and I'm just a topside shooter, whatever you want to call it, but I have noticed that photographers, I've seen this kind of, like it always comes full circle that some of these photographers, because it took so much skill to just shoot on film, because you only have a set amount of pictures, exposures you can take. So I've seen a lot of photographers, they'll go out and they'll shoot film, just to kind of really hone their skills. And I was almost just kind of wondering when you were speaking about it, I wonder if people even still try to do that underneath the water. Is that even like a thing that people have ventured back to full circle, or it's because
I'm sure there's got to be somebody somewhere. I don't know of anybody doing it underwater. I know a few people doing it topside, but that's a real skill, and I think it might be a lost art. It's pretty impressive.
I agree. Yeah, and yeah, just because you're so limited, but that was one thing that people were suggesting, because you only have like, okay, I have 25 images I could capture, so I really have to make them good. I have to put the time into it. Whereas today, I mean, I'll come back from a trip. I'm still kind of trigger happy where I'll come back. I'm like, man, I have 200 shots. Now I have to go through these and figure out which is the best one. Where they're like, if you go out and do a film camera, just kind of practice on it, it'll help you limit your shots so you're not just going out there like snaps, photo, photo, photo.
Spray.
Yeah. So it's something that I've thought about, but like I said, it's just it's a hobby, so kind of when I can get to it. But I really, really do enjoy it. But to bring it back a little bit, what were the challenges? I mean, I'm assuming there's quite a bit of challenges, but what were the challenges that you were seeing when you first got into underwater photography at the time? I'm sure it'd be a little bit different now, but what were and thankfully you stuck with it, because I'm sure some people would be like, this is too much, I'm over it, like I'm on to the next hobby. But what made you stick with it, and what were some of the challenges that you saw?
I guess I saw what could be accomplished, and I never would imagine like I would, be able to, have a published photo or something like that. That was never the goal. For me, it was always, I'd like to get just a good, clean photo. It doesn't need to be anything amazing, but if it kind of captures the memory for me for the day or for the week or the weekend or whatever it may be, have something kind of like, some people like to make, diaries or logbooks or whatever. I like to get a photo just to kind of, that was always the goal, because I thought, well, someday, I'll be too old, hopefully, to do much, and I'll have some photos to look at of, my crazy youth, of the stuff that I did. So that was always the driving goal for me. It was just kind of memories. And I don't collect a lot of stuff, but I try to get the odd good photo every once in a while. And to your point about, overshooting, I was certainly guilty of that. I'd say years ago, I did a lot of that, especially when I got into my first digital cameras. I was like, oh, look at this is great. I could shoot hundreds of photos on the dive, and I ended up deleting all of them because they were all crap. Right? So I would just get rid of them all. But then I realized, like, look, if I go back to thinking about, what do I want to accomplish? Let's set up, for one or two shots that I want. And it doesn't always work out. It's sometimes it just doesn't go your way. But if I get that one shot that I'm after, then I don't feel like I need to have 300 good shots. I just want one. Just give me one, and then I'm not greedy. I'm happy with one. So the film, I guess, in that way is always kind of, on a film camera, you would always be saving one or two exposures, right? Because it's like, I never want to be out, because that's the day, a killer whale is going to decide to come up and swim beside me or something. So you always got to save one, right? Like, and so I think I still have that mentality of, let's, go easy, just get what you want, what you came to do, but don't go crazy with the trigger.
So when you're on an average shoot, when you're going out, you're like, okay, we're gonna go shoot, we're gonna go set up. Like, how many images are you coming back with? Like, do you set a number for yourself? Like, what's the gauge when you're underwater? Like, I'm sure that there's moments that have passed where you're like, missed that one. But like, what's the gauge? Like, okay, I'm not going over 50, I'm not going over 20. And maybe I'm just probably asking right now just for, my future self, but I'm also obviously kind of curious.
So I don't want to burden myself with too many unrealistic expectations on a dive. And it's great to have all these ideas. Like, hey, I'm going to go and shoot this spot of the wreck, then I'm going to go over here, then I'm going to go back to the stern, and then I'm going to do, 3 people are going to line up, and we're going to have, turtles and dolphins and all kinds of stuff. And, it never works out. So I find pare it down to the minimum. So have one kind of primary setup that I kind of want to go in. What do I want to shoot? And then I'll always like to have a backup if for some reason I can't get to where I want to go in the first place, or if I feel like I'm successful on that shoot and I still have time. But most of these wrecks that we're doing these days, it's a very short window to get in and get it done, because you're looking at some fairly lengthy decompression a lot of times. So we might only have 20 or 30 minutes, and that's your total dive time, right? That's the time you start your descent. So you could be easily, 3 to 5 minutes to drop down to the wreck, and then you got to kind of orient yourself, and you got to, get to where you want to go, shoot it, then you could be easily 5 minutes back to the line, and then you start your decompression. So you got to stay on schedule. So I try really hard not to plan too much. Go in. I'd rather go in light, with just a couple ideas in mind, and then try to hit that mark without um, stretching myself too thin.
Perfect segue into my next question is, so you took those early courses, you started diving, and now you're a photographer. Is that when you started your journey into the technical side of things as far as diving? Because you saw, obviously, the shipwrecks are getting deeper, dive times need to be deeper or longer, I should say. So how did that all progress? And what? Well, yeah, I guess we'll just go from there. How did that all progress?
Yeah, it was really just kind of a natural progression. I never set out, with the idea in mind that I was gonna, oh, I need to go get to a certain depth or a certain location or anything like that. It was always, well, the group that I kind of fell in with, it was always, hey, we heard about this other wreck. Do you want to do that next summer? Oh, okay. What's that at? Oh, it's at, 60 meters. Oh, okay. Well, then you kind of, well, I need to go take a couple courses before then, right? So you kind of you work on the training, years go by, and then there's one guy in our group we always kind of laugh about because he would, when we first met, he's like, there's absolutely no reason why I would dive anything below 60 meters. Absolutely, you don't need to go any deeper than that. I'm like, okay, okay. A couple of years go by, and we got another wreck that comes up, and this one's at like I don't know, 90 meters, and he goes and he does that one, and okay, but there's no reason to do anything more than 90 meters. That's all you need to do. Oh, well, this summer we've got one plan for like, I think it's like 120 or something like that. And he's like, okay, but no more than 120. That's as deep as you need to go. There's nothing beyond that. So so we'll see where it takes us, but who knows?
Yeah. No, that's funny. And to be honest, I mean, I guess that's probably a better mentality than like, what's the deepest we can go, especially when you start going, into to that
Yeah.
sort of diving. Like,
Chasing numbers is kind of meaningless at some point. Like,
yeah,
I had it said to me a long time ago, depth is not an indication of skill. And I at the time I didn't appreciate it, but the more I think about it, the people that I look up to the most, they're not the ones that are chasing numbers, right? They're not chasing like, oh, look at me, I got to, 150 meters or something. Like it's just it's not the big mystery that it was. The divers that I look up to are the ones that are just incredibly efficient, incredibly clean in the water. You can look at them and their trim is perfect, their mindset is perfect. They're just kind of in a Zen mode, and then you see these guys and girls go out and just plan these phenomenal dives of just sometimes they're in caves or wherever for 10, 12, 15 hours, like just mind-blowing stuff that people do. So those are the people I look to that really know what's going on, but they'll never talk about depth, right? Depths are just kind of irrelevant at that point. So doesn't
yeah,
matter.
yeah. And no, I mean, someone said it best one time is, um, it's easy and any idiot can get to 100 meters. It's getting back up is the hard part.
Oh
Like,
yeah, yeah.
so it's
The
like,
work starts when you leave the bottom. That's when the work starts. Yeah,
so,
yeah.
no, and I'm kind of in the same little bit of the same boat right now. Is like I don't. I'm starting to look. I'm starting my journey into the technical diving world, and I'm starting to look at rebreathers, and the big question is like, well, what are your goals? What do you want to do? And I don't really know. I just know I like what I'm doing, and I'm like, okay, well, what's that little bit further? And looking at like units, and someone's like, oh, do you want to make it to the Century Club? And I'm just like, I don't know if I ever really want to go that deep. Like I don't have no urge to, but kind of like your buddy, when there's something like, hey, let's go here, this might be fun. Well, yeah, that might be kind of cool. Let me train and prep up to something like that. But like sitting here right now, it's like I'm like, yeah, I have no urge to go that deep because I don't know what's down there. I don't know, but I'm sure once I hit that 40-meter shipwreck, and then I'm like, this is absolutely amazing, and then someone's like, well, there's one at 55 meters, you know.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, well,
Yeah.
let's
Yeah.
let's train up to that.
Yeah. I feel like if there's a valid reason, and you want to invest the time and the training and the effort to get there, then there's by all means, it's when people kind of they want to cut corners and they want to fast track it, right? It's I've seen that, we've all seen that movie, right? Where it doesn't end well for those people. And, it's not to say that, I've never made mistakes and, by the grace of God, I'm still here, right? But, I like to think, there's a little bit more than just luck as to why I'm still around, but we're constantly learning. And the minute you think that, there's nothing to learn, then it's maybe time to go think about doing something else with your life. Cause
Yeah.
this is not the sport to go in with a bunch of hubris and, think of, it couldn't happen to me. Right.
Yeah, no, I agree. I definitely agree. And real quick, I don't know, from the pictures I've seen, do you dive a Revo?
I do. Yep.
Okay,
yep.
cool.
That's my rig. Yep.
How do you like that? Because actually, that's a unit that I was just started looking at, and I actually reached out to an instructor about that unit. I've heard my former instructor told me one time, or current instructor, I should say, because I'll be going back to him for courses. He's like, if you find me a perfect rebreather, I'll show you, Moses in the burning bush, because there's no perfect
Exactly.
rebreather, right? So
There isn't any. No.
and it's hard too when you start looking into this, because it's like I'll start reading about one unit and this whole team of people behind it saying this is the best unit ever, and then a whole other team of people saying this is the worst unit ever. And I'm like, how does one even decide how to get into a rebreather just because of that?
Yeah, that's a tough one. I mean, so right out of the gate, full disclosure, I've only ever dove the Revo. I'm only qualified to dive the Revo. So I'm not qualified to comment on other rebreathers. So all I can do is tell you about my experiences. And it was kind of, a good friend of mine was, he decided that he was selling that machine, and he would change machines about every 2 years or so, just because, he could financially afford it. And that was him. So he said, here, this is the machine you want. This is a great machine. And I went, okay, I'll try it, whatever. So foolishly, I got into it, but knock on wood, it's been a great machine for me. Certainly when it comes to mixed gas diving now, I'd kind of shudder to think about doing that on open circuit. It's a little bit spendy. And that's not to say that, you can justify dropping, 5 to 10 grand on a breather. That's, it's not really a financially wise decision. If we were going to be smart with our money, we'd probably be like day traders or something. I don't know, but it wouldn't be in diving. That's for damn sure. So, but the breather's been, it's been a game changer for us, for our group. It's allowed us to be really independent. A lot of places we go to are very remote. So I can show up with a milk crate full of dill bottles and I'm good for the week. I don't need to do fills, none of that stuff. So I'm completely self-sufficient with that machine. I've never had it where it's let me down. I've made mistakes personally on it, but I've recovered from it. But the machine itself it's always done what it was supposed to do. Now, that's not to say that there isn't a very steep learning curve with a rebreather, because there is. They're busy machines and you need to be on your toes, and you don't always have the luxury of making mistakes like you do maybe in open circuit. Mistakes can be pretty costly on a rebreather. So there's a mindset that comes with it. You need to be very details oriented with these machines.
Yeah, no, I agree, and that's why it was something that I wasn't really sure. Like, if you would have asked me a year ago, or obviously when I first got into diving, rebreather, no, probably not happening. But as you progress, it just kind of starts looking more appealing, and then that's a constant question. And I even really think it's not even think it is a topic of debate at this point, is where is open circuit mixed gas diving going because of costs
Yeah.
are rising and so I've definitely seen a lot of articles on, is are rebreathers the future of deep diving, mixed gas diving. So, but yeah, that's a whole nother dent in the pocketbook. So it's kind of like a thing where I'm like, okay, we'll just see where it goes. But bringing it, so you said you were talking about shipwrecks and caves. I'm assuming from your background, you're more into shipwrecks. How did your journey into caves start?
Yeah, great question. It would have been in the late 1990s. There was a very famous cover photo on National Geographic by a gentleman named Wes Skiles, and it was of a cave in Florida called Dapolder. And I saw that, and I was living out on Vancouver Island at the time, and I pretty much made up my mind then I was going to learn how to cave dive. I didn't know how I would afford it, how I would get to Florida. I was a long ways away from Vancouver Island, um, but within, I think it was by 2001, I was full cave certified, and I wasn't on those particular dives, but I was doing some dives that I thought were pretty impressive for me personally. A couple of reasons I got into caving. One was that photo, but there was also the mindset of I want to progress my skills in wreck diving. And the thought that our group had was, well, if we want to get into these wrecks and really kind of get in and understand them and be efficient when we move inside these shipwrecks, probably a good idea. We could go learn something from the cave community. And we thought, well, we probably won't like caving very much, but we'll just go down, take the courses, and we'll apply that knowledge to dive in these shipwrecks. Unfortunately, every single one of us fell in love with cave diving as well, because it's just as addictive as like anything you can imagine. And yeah, so that's how I got into it, was trying to build my skills, but then I realized that this is really a lot of fun too, and I could spend all kinds of money here as well. So um, not the smartest choice, but yeah.
No, that's
Retirement's a long ways away from me, as you can imagine.
no, that's great too, because it is funny how that works out, because just exactly what I was saying about the rebreather. So I lived in the Austin, Texas, Central Texas area for a long time. So obviously, like a big travel destination is down in Mexico. Cozumel, Cancun, Playa, Tulum has popped up very big in the past 10 years. So getting into scuba diving, you're like, oh, okay, I need to go down to Cozumel, check it out. You hear about the cenotes, and before going down there, I was like, yeah, I've seen pictures of caves. That's something that I would probably never do. I'd not be interested in, but I'll go do a cenote just to try it out, because it's you're not sold on it before you get there, but there's a lot of hype around it, and
Yep.
instantly saw the appeal. As soon as you're in there, I'm just like, okay,
Oh
now
yeah.
I know why people do
Yep.
this now, and then as you're saying too, the skill level to get to be able to do those sort of things. I feel like once I started progressing in my diving, I'm like, okay, well, how do I get better? And you see the skill level that it takes to get into those environments, and then it becomes even more appealing. And it's definitely a goal of mine to make it out there and try to do some cave training. I went out there to Tulum to do a side mount course out there, and really enjoyed it. Top notch instructors, just really a good time. And I actually just reached out to him not too long ago and was like, hey, I was planning to come back by now, but unfortunately I'm stuck in Malaysia. I'm not stuck out here, but I'm on a contract out here, and it's a little bit of a destination, but I'm like, hopefully early next year I can make it back out there and kind of start my journey into the caves. And I know there's some good instructors out here on this side of the world too, but I feel like once I find a good instructor that I like to work with, I'm like, I'm gonna go back to them, because I felt like I progressed quite a bit when I was down there. So
Yeah, if you've got experience with an instructor and you like that person's style of teaching, and most importantly, you feel like you've progressed in your knowledge, then by all means, I feel like it's great to have those individuals that you can go back to. And I've been so lucky to have had people that have mentored me, the instructors that I've dealt with along the way. Like I really haven't had a bad experience when it comes to all of the people that have kind of, guided me over my, 30 plus years of diving. It's you know, incredibly fortuitous when I look back and some of the, how lucky I've been with that. Like it's really been hard to believe when you look back on it. But yeah, it's been a trip.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And actually, I just wanted to ask another question about. So you keep speaking of the group that you came up with. Has that been a group that has it been a pretty tight knit group for a lot of years? Do people kind of float in and out? Like, do you guys have a group name? Like, what is
Oh no, no,
that?
it's just no, I would no real. What's that old saying? I would never be a member of a club that would have me as a member. Something like that. No, no official organized. No, there was no hazing or anything like that. Just a group that, and people will come and go. Like I say, over the years, people, people end up having kids, and you'll see people kind of leave for years and they come back, and so people kind of drift in and out, and but there's always been a core couple guys that I've counted on, and we've done some pretty fun things over the years together. So it's yeah, it's changed over the years, but there's always been something to work towards, something to build towards, something to learn. And that's always what I've found most interesting about it is you can continue to keep learning in this sport. There's no point where you're going to go, oh, I know everything now. I'm done here. No. There is, it's a never ending path of knowledge that, it's fun to just always look at what's around the corner and what people are doing, because it's pretty incredible what some people are up to in this sport.
Oh yeah, no, definitely, definitely. And speaking of, you were speaking earlier a little bit of future expedition. Anything that you can talk about, or any fun future expeditions that you're looking forward to?
Yeah, so every summer we'll hit the Great Lakes, and so we've got a few weeks planned around the Great Lakes. There's always, like, especially the last few years, there's always shipwrecks that have been recently located, and so we're always sniffing around trying to get the actual coordinates for some of these shipwrecks. And I'm not an individual that has time or the resources to go out and search for weeks and weeks of where these shipwrecks might be in the bottom of the lake, but some people do, thankfully. And every once in a while, we'll get these coordinates to go and check out these targets. So, we were fortunate last summer. Me personally, I got on, I think, three or four new to me shipwrecks. They weren't like, brand new, but new to me. We're hopeful that we may get one target this year, perhaps. So there's just a lot of wreck diving planned in the next 2 months.
Awesome.
And we're going to pray that we've got good weather and calm seas, and hopefully the targets work out. So we'll see what comes of it. But that's the immediate plans. I've got nothing on the burner in terms of anything overseas or anything. I did just get back from Jordan. I was doing a shoot over in Aqaba, Jordan, for a week. That was pretty fun to go see and experience and see a part of the world I'd never seen before. So it was a lot of fun.
Cool. I actually, random question. That first shipwreck that got you intrigued about scuba diving, have you been back there to shoot that shipwreck? Have you been back to that wreck since that first dive, or maybe it's been multiple times since that first time that you've been there?
I've dove it quite a bit, but that is one shipwreck I've never actually photographed, and it's always kind of bugged me. Is I need to get that one photographed. It would be a tough one to do. It's pretty broken up, but it's a very large shipwreck. There's a lot of current. It's pretty dark, so it would be very tricky. But I like that, and yeah, it's been one that's been kind of gnawing at me for a while to go try to shoot it, and I would dearly like that. And yeah, who knows? Maybe this is the year.
Yeah, you got to get the group together to go out and be like, oh, I got a great
Yeah,
wreck we can go and dive and shoot.
it's in
uh,
like 10 meters.
um, so I think that's great though that you have a group of people that you work with, because as you were speaking earlier, when you get down there to these depths, you only have a certain amount of time. So it must be really nice to have people that you can work with in a team that, because most of the time we're not speaking to each other down there. So it's, just kind of random hand signals. I know we can kind of muffle stuff through our regulator, or I'm not a rebreather diver, so I don't know how much better or worse it is. But that's great that you have a team. Is there a lot of work prior to the dive, like going into that? Like, what kind of prep are you doing to go, like, okay, we're going to go down here. We don't know what we're going to find. Once we get down there, like, what's the type of work that goes into that?
So yeah, on your point about rebreathers, you can actually vocalize quite a bit more on a loop, we call it.
Okay.
And I'm told that I'm very shouty. I get very shouty at my models in the water, so I always feel bad afterwards because I'm trying to like vocalize in a nice way, but then I get a little too shouty sometimes. So like all the models out there. But we do. I cannot thank um, models enough for when people decide that they want to help out, whether that's pose to be in the photograph or help light or to. I hate asking people to do it because you're kind of asking somebody to give up their dive in a sense, right? I mean, hanging out with a photographer is like the worst thing ever because I'll just spend half an hour doing a shoot, and it's just I'm camped out in one spot maybe, right? Whereas that person, they want to go see, the whole wreck or the whole cave or whatever it is. So I'm incredibly thankful for when people want to help out and assist, because it doesn't always work out, right? I mean, sometimes come back and like, sorry, I didn't get anything. So, but there is a bit of planning. I certainly try to make sure that we're on the same page as to what we want to do, what we want to accomplish. I try to get that person's interest as well. If they say, "Hey, did you see this particular whatever it was on the shipwreck? Let's go look closer at that." And like, "Oh, that's a great idea. I didn't. Let's have a look." So I love to get their interest and their feedback and make sure that they've got something that interests them too, right? It always astounds me that people are willing to assist, whether it be modeling, lighting, whatever it is, because it's not always fun and it's a difficult job to do. And I'm incredibly thankful for that.
Any top moments, top two, top three, top picture, top dive, top shipwreck? What do you have any standout moments in your
Oh,
career?
oh man. I hope that the best is yet to come, right?
Okay, that's a
I
great
mean,
answer.
that's I try not to, I try not to look back too much. What's that saying about nostalgia? Or is it nostalgia is a dangerous thing when it comes to the art world, right? You don't want to look back too much. You want to be
That's
looking
true.
forward. So I so I don't spend a lot of time looking back in my life. It's something I do kind of pride myself on is I'll do the shoot. I'll either be happy with it or I won't. But I'll try to adapt and move on, right? Change what I want to change. And I've never had a perfect shoot, right? I've never had it where it went, oh, I'm done with that. Can never, I can never do better than that. No, I've never had that experience. Maybe someday I'll go, oh, that went perfect. But there's always something, right? So maybe that's why I don't like looking back because I always see the things that I'd want to fix. But I would say, some of the highlights. Oh man, I'd say some of the shipwrecks that we've done. So the Ohio comes to mind in Lake Huron. We shot that one last summer. I've always had a real fondness for the Kamloops up in Lake Superior. Really difficult wreck to shoot, but I've always loved the challenge with that. Some of the caves we did, Eagle's Nest in Florida is always one. It's both terrifying and exhilarating at the same time. It's a deep cave. It's a challenging cave. It's different every time you're there. I've done some fairly significant dives in that for me personally. I mean, small compared to what the locals do down there, but for me, it was big diving. So yeah, I think yeah, I've been very happy with what I've done in the past, but I think the best is yet to come.
Great. No, that's a good answer. So,
I practiced for that one.
yeah.
No, I died.
Besides not starting on film, if I was a new diver looking to get into the underwater imaging world, what advice would you give to that person?
Keep it simple. Just keep it simple. Yeah, don't. Yeah, go take up golfing or something.
Yeah,
right? Save a lot of money. You can be retired by the time you're 40. Just don't do it. No, I mean, I would encourage anybody to pick up photography, and if you want to go underwater, keep it simple. Go minimalist, right? Just know the camera that you've got. Getting the camera's not that important. It really isn't. I mean, the cameras are pretty good today, so you don't need to go and spend, an insane amount of money on the latest and greatest camera. It's just not necessary. I know, Canon and Nikon might not like this podcast very much, but that's my opinion. That's why I'm not sponsored by anybody, I guess. Um, but keep it simple. I see a lot of people will go down there they've got strobe lights and video lights and a GoPro, and then they've got the main SLR. It's just like what are you doing? Like have just this, keep it simple, have something in mind, but to go down and try to do everything, you probably won't be happy with the results, right? But if my best experience, if I go down with one purpose in mind, one shot in mind, work to get that one shot, that's way more rewarding than coming back with 200 mediocre shots, right? Like, just all I need is one. I don't need a lot, right? So keep it simple, stay focused on what you want to do, what you want to accomplish, and then just keep working it, keep refining it. You go back, try it again. How else can I shoot it, right? So I've had some dives where I've done it, a dozen times or more, and I tried to refine the shoot every time, try to figure out, because I've never had the perfect shoot, I always go back and, well, I'd like to try this time, right? So yeah, for me, it's a very iterative approach, just constantly trying to improve, trying to learn, trying not to make the same mistakes.
I feel like that's some great life advice too. Keep it simple, keep learning, try not to make mistakes.
Well, I always say, the dive comes first, right? Obviously, go dive, have fun, come back from it. That's first and foremost, and if the camera happens to be in hand and things are going well, then yeah, shoot it, but dive first, camera second.
Well, I guess that was going to be my last question, but I have another question that I was going to ask. Do you ever dive without a camera?
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, quite often in the spring, because this is a pretty gear intensive sport, right? I mean, there can be a lot going on. Sometimes we'll have rebreathers and scooters and cameras, and so it's very compounding in terms of task loading, right? So certainly in the spring, the early dives, I like to kind of ease back into the cold water in the Great Lakes and not task load myself right out of the gate. Build up that experience every year. Take it easy. So we try to start out with some, fairly shallow dives in the spring. No cameras. Just get in the water. Make sure your brain still works. Make sure everything's still going, and then just build on it again over the season. Right? Build up every season. Get that experience. Make sure the brain is working. Right? That's the biggest piece of equipment that needs to work.
Yeah. No, for sure. Jeff, thank you very, very much for coming on to the show today. I hope you had a great time, and I definitely felt like I've learned a little bit more about the photography world. I don't know if I will jump into it, the underwater side of it. I'm still trying to figure it out on land. But no, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Oh, it's been wonderful, Nick. Thanks so much for having me. It's been a great time talking with you, and I hope we can meet up for a drink in Penang someday. I'd really like that.
Offgassing, a scuba podcast.